1 year ago, I was out of school and sick. After testing negative for COVID, my doctor diagnosed me with a respiratory virus. My symptoms were similar to those of coronavirus, but less severe. A week later, I recovered completely and returned to school only to find half my classmates missing. The majority of them were home and sick with COVID. While I was shocked to find my school empty due to a wave of COVID, what was more shocking is what a friend said to me when I returned. He told me that he talked to some of the students who were sick at home with COVID, and all of them thought I infected them last week. These claims would have immediately been put to rest had they known I was not infected with COVID. However, when people are sick, they often try to look for the cause of their sickness, even if it is not at all important to their recovery. My classmates all jumped to conclusions to try and piece together how they got sick and to direct their blame somewhere and on someone. My situation only displays blame on an individual level, but historically, people in societies have been blaming each other for diseases for centuries. During the height of the COVID pandemic, hate crimes against Asian Americans rose significantly due to the disease's origin in China. Looking further back, in the late 19th and early 20th century, recent Italian and Jewish immigrants were targets, especially in New York City. Tuberculosis was branded the Jewish disease. Due to Jews' previous exposure to it in overcrowded cities of Eastern Europe, they were less susceptible to tuberculosis. Furthermore, because of accusations of being filthy, given their living conditions in some of New York City's worst slums, Italians were blamed for the polio epidemics of 1907 and 1916. We can go even further back to the height of the witch trials in Massachusetts in the 1690s. Many people were experiencing unusual convulsions, spasms, and hallucinations due to ergotism, a disease caused by the ingestion of ergot fungus. Towns looked to find a reason for the erratic behavior people experienced and pointed to witchcraft. Historians believe many women were executed and persecuted due to the blaming of ergotism on witches. There is no shortage of examples like these. The behavior of blaming people for getting sick has been consistent over time. The blaming mindset that people have when it comes to disease is a natural tendency due to how our minds work, and understanding it is an integral part of improving our public health. An essential part of understanding why we blame each other is understanding how our minds work. This year in class, we all read a book known as The Righteous Mind. In this book, Jonathan Haidt explains the psychological theories behind division, disagreement, and decision-making. Haidt presented a seemingly simple theory to explain how humans think. He stated that our minds are like an elephant and a rider. The elephant is our intuitive, uncontrolled, and emotional side, and the rider is our rational, controlled, and analytical side. The elephant, our emotional side, is much bigger and more powerful than the rider or our rational brain. It's difficult for the rider to control the elephant. When feeling calm and centered, the elephant knows what's good for us and takes us into the right direction. The rider simply needs to gently guide the elephant with a light touch. But when the elephant is feeling emotional, upset, frightened, stressed, or annoyed, it charges. Our elephants are always leaning based on our emotional biases and preconceived beliefs, and the only way to surpass this is by allowing our riders to take charge. Unfortunately, the rational rider is not very powerful, so it's tough to control our elephants. It is a visceral reaction to try and blame others for getting sick and spreading sickness when we are emotional, especially when we are uncertain and afraid. This is because our elephants lean toward the idea that health is controllable and changeable. We can be divided into two categories. There are those who believe in the incremental theory of health, the idea that health is changeable, and those who believe in the entity theory of health, the idea that health is unchangeable. Our elephants will lean towards these implicit beliefs regarding disease. I would have thought that people who believe health is changeable would promote less social stigma and more social support surrounding disease. As it turns out, I was wrong. Studies show that people who hold an incremental theory of health are not overly supportive and blame people more for getting sick. This is because they believe that since health is changeable, it can be controlled, and therefore, people should be able to prevent themselves from falling into illness and spreading it. We can explain this idea in terms of smoking. We might expect that the incremental theory of health holder would be more supportive of someone suffering from a tobacco addiction. However, studies show that those who believe smoking behavior is changeable are more likely to blame a person for smoking because they believe the smoker has some control over their behavior. The same idea can be applied to disease. Sorry, one second. This is important because most modern health education promotes the idea that health is changeable. In my own experience shadowing in the hospital, I have heard multiple conversations where medical workers express little compassion towards patients with specific health issues. Often, the common expression is, they did this to themselves, which goes right along with the incremental theory of health. That's not to say that promoting the idea that health is changeable is bad, because it's not. Healthcare has made positive progress in teaching people the incremental theory of health. It has helped people learn about what unhealthy habits they have. It has helped people learn to exercise and eat better. And it has taught people that the idea that you have no control over your health is just dead wrong. But teaching this theory comes with an unwanted price tag, and that is the desire to blame others for illness. By learning that we have these underlying biases that cause us to blame one another for getting sick and spreading sickness, we can move past them. Just because we learn that we have some control over our health does not mean we have to lose compassion for those around us and assume that everyone should be leading perfectly healthy lives. We can agree on the scientific fact that germs are contagious and lifestyle choices affect our health while avoiding discrimination and persecution. Let's return to my story about being blamed for COVID. Blaming one person you think may have had COVID a week before you had it makes virtually no sense. You are not a doctor who can diagnose other people, and you are not a contact tracer whose job is to track the spread of disease. However, just because it's unreasonable to try and blame someone when you get sick does not mean people aren't to blame for spreading sickness. Everyone should act responsibly when they are ill. For example, going onto a plane without a mask and a respiratory virus is not a wise or smart thing to do. The incremental theory of health can be positively taught by helping people understand that just because we shouldn't blame others doesn't mean we have no control over our health and the health of others. However, it should also be taught with consideration that having control over your health does not mean you should be blamed for all of your ailments. For example, nurses in the hospital could hate that someone drank excessively and destroyed their health. But instead of saying they deserved it, they should take a few moments to understand the biochemical grip of addiction. Knowing that everyone develops their own beliefs and biases that they tend to lean toward can help identify our own biases. When it comes to health and sickness, we tend to lean a certain way. Whether it be towards or away from compassion, our willingness to give in to social stigmas, or our disregard of the facts and rationality of a given situation. By noticing when our elephants are leaning and when we are irresponsibly placing blame on others, we can put ourselves in check and correct our behavior for a better atmosphere and public health. Thank you.